Yeah. Be nice, right?
Yeah.
One more plane. There's probably a couple.
If you want a drink, it's easier to come up and get one. Thanks for coming to the lecture. Clown students, it means stop talking.
What?
Yeah. We have a great opportunity to have John Davison have a little talk with us. Thank you, John. Take it away.
Okay, so I was just playing around with a few images just for the beginning, so it looks nice at the beginning. I didn't want a blank screen. And those are all images which are historical images. What does that mean? Well, they're from points in the past. Well, that's history, right? And they all have some significance. I won't be talking about all of them, but they're just there as a record. I don't know, anyone recognize any of those things or know what it is? What is it?
Rosa Parks.
That's Rosa Parks, yeah. Meeting a clown. Do you know who the clown is?
Is he a ringling? Is that?
She was with, I don't remember. I'm not an expert on this clown. She worked in the UK and in the States. Okay, you can look her up, find out. Yeah, little adventure trail. What? Any other recognition there? Anything?
Pueblo clowns.
So what?
Are they Pueblo clowns on the bottom?
These ones down here. That's not the name I'd have. No. Yeah. So they're Kashari from the Hopi people. Do you know what they're doing?
Sniffing each other's butts.
Kind of, but they're playing tug of war. Backwards. Yeah, backwards. Probably involving penises as well. I don't quite know. That's a historical document, like 1903, I think, from. I don't remember who took it, but that's the period when anthropologists were seriously interested in clowns from Southwest U.S., so New Mexico, Arizona, that area, and actually, some of the very first anthropologists, they're quite young. Anthropology was invented in the late 19th century. Before that, they were antiquarians, historians, but the idea of anthropology, like actually studying human behavior, was quite recent. So it's a late 19th century thing. And some of the first of those people who called themselves anthropologists, what they were mostly interested in were clowns from that part of the world particularly. There's lots of reasons why they might be interested in that. They were mostly kind of Harvard professors, like East Coast US kind of guys. Probably kind of quite straight-laced, kind of very conservative, late 19th century European and white North American culture was very conservative in terms of its morals. And they were fascinated by what they thought were, grotesque, disgusting displays of, debauchery and shit throwing and all that kind of stuff. So they were very fascinated, and they had theories like, these societies, these people have also very conservative ways of organizing themselves. So, hey, that explains why their clowns are so disgusting. They came up with theories. They came up with ideas based on what they thought they were observing. It's a reasonable hypothesis. They're having a good time, and it's a bit, I don't know. How do you judge that? How do you know what it means, and what significance does it have? My approach throughout this whole thing is going to be, well, it depends who you are, where you are, and when you are, and who you're looking at, and why, and all those kind of questions. Yeah. So that's a historical document. Maybe it's more interesting about the anthropologists than about the clowns. I don't know. What else do you recognize up there? That's Toulouse-Lautrec painting up there on the top left. Do you know who it's a painting of? So it's got a line. Hang on, can I remove that? No, but it's around that time. So I'm going to leave you to find out. Because when we don't know who people are, there's a reason, right? Funny, the two people we didn't know who they were so far were women. Rosa Parks, you know who. Who else is up there? Who's that? Says Paul Young. That's up there. Paul Young. Or Paul Young, I don't know how you said it. So that's a name. He's got a name, that clown. He's a man. Yeah, he's on Kellogg. He's advertising, but he's still got a name. He's not generic clown. He's got a name. Yeah, that tells you something about who they are. These have got names here, but you can't see who they are. Do you know who they are? No. Okay, they're from this country. They're from Canada. So you know your history. That's why you don't know them. Yeah, yeah. And what about at the top? You probably won't know these ones. Just like you don't know some of the others. or what it's about. What's it about?
Liberty.
Liberty, yes. Yes. But it says, in Catalan, it says liberty for political prisoners. And they're holding up a Catalan flag. Well, it's not the flag, it's the flag of the Catalanists who want independence of Catalonia. And they're wearing red noses. So that's a historical document about a particular moment in an independence movement that didn't, it never happened, the independence, it nearly happened. And I'll be coming back to that, what's that got to do with politics, clowns and all that pretty soon. Anyway, so that's a little survey, some random historical documents. There's loads of them. Right, let's move on. Oh, look, empty slide. Yeah, so clown history, what's it for? So it might be for understanding what was going on at the time and who was trying to understand it. And then bringing it back to today, what ideas about clowns do we need today? So all those images had ideas about what clowns are, or what they should be, or who they are, or who we think they are, and what they do. And that's the central question really I'm interested in, is what about today? So we're going from history to understand today. Like, for example, do we need grandiose universal claims to truth, for example? Little neutral question there. Those of you who know me, I'm not keen on the grandiosity about clowns, but some people are. So what's that about? Why are claims to truth connected to clowns sometimes? Right. So here's what I'm saying to you. So a couple of weeks ago, I got an email asking me to write a program note for a show at the Edinburgh International Festival. Wrong glasses. Reading glasses. And what it said in the email was, as part of this year's program, Geoff Sobel's clown show will be appearing in Contemporary Portrait of America as a Falling Apart Circus. I hadn't heard of Geoff Sobel. Anyone heard of Geoff Sobel? Oh, okay. Right. Phew. This came from the head of marketing at the Edinburgh International Festival. Hey, come in. You probably may have heard of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Edinburgh Fringe Festival. But there's the Edinburgh International Festival, which is the official festival, which has a lot of money, and was the original festival back in the 1950s. And the Fringe happened around it for artists who couldn't be part of the official festival. Anyway, this is from the official festival. anyway, just before I go on with the email, just want to point out here a couple of things I'm going to refer to, the ideas. So when I started to read this, I thought, okay, the implication here is that the show has something to say about our current lives, right? By naming it as contemporary, right? The contemporary portrait of America, the marketing, this is already marketing, which hasn't been written, but it's already there in the email, wants us to believe this clown show has at least has a relevance to our lives, right? That's what this is saying. So that's the case with marketing copy, you know, press releases, newspaper, digital media reviews. They often talk about this means something to us now because this, and this. It's relevant, yeah? In this case, clowns are relevant because they are doing this, and this. So what is it? So what are clowns for? What do we think they're for now? And what is it they do? So, oh wait, where was the rest of the email? Oh yeah, no, okay, yeah, sorry. I'm going to show you the trailer for that show, Geoff Sobel's Clown Show. That's the title. It's short and it's kind of curious. Here it goes. Oh, okay, contemporary relevance. Oh, whoa. No, I don't want to play it again. Right. Here, back to the email. So this is what they wrote to me. I'm looking to commission a program note on the history of clowns and their place as truth tellers and how this tradition continues into the present day and can still hold a mirror to our times. While the piece would certainly touch on Geoff's show as a jumping off point, the idea would be to show the broader picture. I found this kind of very intriguing, and not just because I had a bit of an ego boost being asked to write for the Edinburgh International Festival, and I thought, ooh. I wrote an email back immediately, which I then quickly erased, because I wanted the job, I wanted the kudos and the bit of cash they would pay. And I didn't want to put them off with my actual insights into history, which I knew would contradict their assumptions about clown history. Tricky. So I just wrote back with this. That's a very interesting subject. No, that was the erased one. I'm pretty sure it's just a recent thing, you know. But hey, let's explore it. What an exciting subject. So that's more or less why I didn't send. So I just said, yeah, I'm interested, send me the details. 2 weeks later, actually, the other day, I checked in with them as the deadline was approaching, and I got a reply immediately saying, oh, sorry, we gave the commission to someone else. You know, we've been so busy, and oh, sorry. Damn, that's what would have happened if I'd sent them the original email, which I should have sent them. You know, I wasted a good email saying, hey, your clown history is wrong. I could have sent them that rather than the polite one. Anyway, doesn't matter, because this is what inspired me to get into this lecture this way. And this first part is what I would have wanted to have written in that program note. It would have been far too long, but this is what I would have wanted to have written. So thanks to Edinburgh International Festival for prodding me to speak about truth and power and clowns and history and marketing. Good research often springs out of irritation, the annoyance about things being distorted, about injustice, justice for unfairly treated clown historians. We are a misunderstood minority. So I was very irritated about that. And it's an itch, that wakes me up at 6 a.m. and I just want to scratch it, and I just want to, fully scratch it with academic rigor. That's a thing from, research kind of thing. They say you've got to have rigor. You've got to know your data. You've got to research your sources, and you have to actually speak the truth. So this actual phrase, speaking truth to power, is a 20th century political language from the 20th century, not a medieval or early modern concept. Because my more interesting question was, well, where does that idea originate from? And who has researched that idea, the origin of that idea, that clowns speak truth to power? Where does that come from, and why? And why is this marketing department at the festival asking me, assuming there's a tradition from some point way in the past to the show that they're marketing right now? What's going on? Yeah. So I did some digging, and I found some facts, and I found some scholars, the scholars who look at the origin of this, and this is what you're going to get today. So let's get rigorous. So here's the official origin of that phrase, speak truth to power. It's a Quaker pamphlet from 1955. The American Friends Service Committee, Speak Truth to Power, a Quaker search for an alternative to violence. It's a Cold War pamphlet opposing the madness of MAD, mutual assured destruction. Yeah, they have nuclear weapons, we have nuclear weapons, we'll never use them because otherwise we'd kill everybody. Yeah? And apparently this pamphlet was pretty influential, in progressive anti-war civil rights movements. And here's a couple of bits of it, so you get the idea. So our title is taken from a charge given to 18th century Friends, Quakers, suggests the effort that is made to speak from the deepest insight of the Quaker faith, as this faith is understood by those who prepared this study. We speak power in three senses: to those who hold high places in our national life and bear the terrible responsibility of making decisions for war or peace. 2, to the American people who are the final reservoir of power in this country and whose values and expectations set the limits for those who exercise authority. And 3, to the idea of power itself and its impact on 20th century life. That in itself is a fascinating document, and you could think, is it still the same? Has anything changed? Would you write it like that? But anyway, let's not get into that. And the pamphlet does make some appeal to traditions, you say the 18th century, and they say the Quakers have always believed it was necessary to speak truth to power. Our concern is to reach all men, the great and the humble, and though power in America ultimately rests with the humble, maybe, will it? The great wield it, and must therefore carry peculiar responsibility. And there are lots of citations of biblical sources. There's a citation of some bit in the Bible where, I can't remember what it was, something about, let's punish, let's destroy a whole culture because somebody did something really bad from those people. So it goes way back into history and into biblical history to sort of justify its concepts. I mentioned that because the idea that we would use history to justify, to authorize what we want is kind of relevant to this whole thing. There's one extra note there. It's just worth having there and recording today. This is nothing to do with clowns. It's a long read, sorry, but if you fancy reading that, go ahead. It's about the authors of the pamphlet, and one of them, their names was erased from it. Bayard Rustin's name was removed because he was arrested on a morals charge, and because he was gay. And later on, they reinstated his name on the pamphlet. So anyway, it's just a curious thing where you're looking at history of progressive clowning, and you get into Quakerism, and then suddenly you find, we can't have him on there because he was homosexual, you know. It just makes everything go, wait a minute, what's going on here? Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, it's complicated. But I thought it's you know, let's remember with that. Okay, moving back, here's some Quakers today, some American Quakers. Yeah, that's what they looked like. Yeah. Right, okay. So how did that phrase, speaking truth to power, get linked to clowns? So I looked at my own notes and sort of searched around for things, and I discovered in a book I'd recently read, it's from 2016, it's a book by David Carlyon, who was a circus clown for a short time, and wrote his autobiography called The Education of a Circus Clown. And sorry about all the reading here. Oh God, that's a lot, isn't it? I'll give you the good bits. And he wrote a bit about this, the cliches, as he said. So, look, I'm going to use a pen to highlight here, if that works. Here, those cliches drew me. Does that work for you? Yeah. Hey, look. Wow, I've never done this before. Yeah, cliches had to work, to get around them. Wrestling with stereotypes. Yeah, sometimes embodied them, trickster-like. I got satirical. A dying girl giggled. Yeah, actually, he tells the story of a girl who died that was one of his big fans. Anyway, the cliches are especially difficult. Oh God, I can't write. To avoid. This is because they're embedded in our culture. This is the important thing, yeah? What everyone knows about clowning, yeah, common sense. So here are some cliches, yeah? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he talks about, he's quite, disrespectful about some stuff. Hippie 1960s propelled another shift into the 21st. Oh God, look at this line. Free spirit antics. Traditional clowning. Irony ruled. The people did their own thing. I'm reading. Yeah. Anyway, so he's. I'll give you. Here we go. Some more red lines. Anyway, he talks about. I'll spare you more of that. He talks about the idea of the trickster clown as being the sort of the counterculture stuff about clowns, and he's kind of skeptical about it. Anyway, we'll go over that. His is easier to read. This is talking about when he was working as a clown, when the parents said, "Look at the clown," and I replied, "I wasn't a clown. This was his joke." He would always say, "No, I'm not a clown." A few of them got protective, trying to prevent something. Weren't sure what's going on. He's not a clown, and then who is he? And then they'd explain to their kids that maybe I wasn't like the real clowns down on the floor, but the kids got the joke because the parents caught up. Anyway, oh my gosh, did that make me a trickster? This is the irony in this text, I think. The truth to power, here we go. Truth to power trickster notion had appealed to me in college, but lost its charm as I noticed the implied boast, grandiosity. In this intellectual version of the action hero, the trickster always bests villain-like authority, while those who tout the trickster see themselves beyond his challenge, making it not much of a challenge. So disenchanted with the notion and no longer seeing myself as a rebel, especially after the army had posed its own challenge to my rebel pose, I dismissed the idea that I could be tricksterish, yet I stumbled into the role.
Can you explain that last part?
Yeah.
Like in
This
simpler
bit?
words? Yeah, like I feel like I understand it, but I'm not.
Okay, I'll go a bit into it. Yeah. So he's saying that he liked this idea when he was a young man. The idea of the trickster, the truth to power idea appealed to him as a rebel, but he started to lose interest in it. He didn't like it so much when he found it being a boast about, hey, I'm embodying this figure, this mythological figure, and therefore I have power because I'm speaking truth to power. And that's what he means by the boast. He's saying it's like that hero opposing authority, and those who identify themselves as the trickster are kind of beyond that because they're the trickster, they're the good guys. And that's what kind of put him off, and he kind of got disenchanted with that. Yeah, and so he kind of dismissed that idea. And that's one response to it, you know? Yeah. So as he says, the cliches had drawn him to circus, but he felt they were treacherous. So lots of cliches, whether it's the happy clown, the sad clown, or what he calls the hippie romance of a truth to power trickster, they buried what a working circus clown does in a swamp of stereotype. So he was just finding them all being like images. It wasn't really what he was doing. It wasn't really going up to the kid and saying, "Oh, no, I'm not a clown." For him, it was about what he was literally doing with people in the circus that mattered, and the ideas were just getting in the way. So, as he said, he had to. Where's my pen gone? Oh, there it is. Oh shit! I had to wade through the swamp of the ideas, the received ideas. Yeah. Diverting people from the image they expected and draw them to what I was really doing, while making sure they recognized it was based on what they were really doing. So when someone said to me, "Look at the clown, isn't he funny?" My reply, "I haven't done anything funny yet," was simultaneously a joke and an invitation to engage. And here's a grand phrase: work matters, cliches lie. Yeah, so that's kind of what he's saying there. So I dived back into this stuff. I thought, oh right, yeah, I'd just been reading about this like last year. So this idea of the clowns with the truth to power, maybe it's a 60s thing, 70s, 80s, and that we've inherited. So why would that happen? Yeah. So a couple of things here. Is there a historical precedent in clowns for dissent, in medieval fools or jesters? And or is there an opportunity in clowns, in political satire? Are there new tools for dissent? And is it something new? Yeah? And does it matter? So I looked at some scholars on this. And here's the most up-to-date one. This is Dorinda Uttram. She's a Professor Emerita of History, specialist in early modern German fools. Yeah, isn't that niche? I've just bought this book. I've been able to look through some of it. And she explicitly challenges the romanticized idea of the jester as a noble truth-teller. And her vision of jesters is that, or fools, that they were often degraded servants whose truth function was tightly controlled and frequently humiliating. So, yeah, as she says, writes here, the fool's role was never one of free criticism. It was always constrained by hierarchy and by the expectations of the court. Here's the book with the cover of it. And she looks at 4 specific people. It's very material history, as in looking at actually what people did and said, rather than going for a kind of big overview of things. And here's a couple of the things that she says. That the modern idea of the fool as courageous truth speaker is a romantic projection. You could disagree with these, but this is what the scholar is saying right now. Fool's speech was tightly controlled, instrumental, and often humiliating. Fools were degraded servants. Court fools were dependent, vulnerable, and frequently mocked, with their performances shaped by the needs and whims of their aristocratic employers. Truth was a function of power, not freedom. Any truth fools spoke was authorized, scripted, or ritualized, not a form of resistance or critique. Finally, the 19th century romantic reinvention of the jester as a tragic, noble truth teller is a myth that has distorted historical understanding. So when I read that is supposed to be that the person who is the leader in their academic field as a historian says that historical understanding is being distorted, I listen. So that's my way in. So that's an opinion, a hypothesis based on research. It's another view. So we could ask, well, why is she saying that? Where is it coming from? And so on. Yeah. So these are all relative, all these views on clown history. So she talks about a romanticized myth. So where's it all come from? This is some more clown history here. So how did the Victorians of the 19th century construct this myth? Here's an example. Victor Hugo's Le Roi s'amuse, the king amuses himself. So this has a jester, it's a play, 1832. Jester is a tragic outsider. Triboulet is the jester. Is morally tortured, marginal, and emotionally complex. Not a working court servant, or a degraded servant, as Outram would say. So that's one source. That's a very influential writer, Victor Hugo, very influential. Beginning of Romanticism in Europe. Middle of the century, John Doran's History of Court Fools said that fools were philosophers in motley. Motley is the costume. And so Doran retrofits medieval fools as privileged truth tellers, inventing a moralized romantic narrative. These are romantic notions. Yeah. So if we look back at another historical period, looking at a previous historical period, it's often easier to see that they're just saying that because everyone was saying that in 1858. Yeah, because that's what people said, that's what people wanted, that's what meant something to people at that time. It doesn't mean that the medieval time thought like that. Here's a painting by William Merritt Chase called Keying Up the Court Jester. An interpretation, or you might want to interpret it differently. The jester is alone, intense, psychologically burdened, more bohemian artist than servant. I might not describe it like that, but that's the view coming from Outram. Here's another painting, Ernst Hildebrand, later in the century, the court jester. Again, solitary. I don't think it's a serious figure, but anyway, it's definitely part of that romantic image of what the fool was. So all this 19th century stuff then fed back into scholarship about fools and jesters and medieval clowns. And so when you start reading the authoritative texts on medieval clowns from the 20th century, you get this stuff. It gets recycled. The fool could utter truths which no one else dared to speak. When you read the book, that's not actually what any of the quotations are showing. That's Enid Welsford, and her book is kind of standard reading for History of Fools, 1935. The fool alone could tell the king the truth. Another basic text on history of fools, William Wilford, 1969, and then much more up to date. The jester was often the only one who could tell the truth to the ruler, Beatrice K. Otto, Fools Are Everywhere, that's 2001. So the idea gets recycled, yeah? But as I say, if you look, and we're not going to go in and analyze these texts today, it would take weeks. But if you read these books, what you're getting are stories often prefaced with, this story was told to me by the Prince of so-and-so, but it may just be his idea about something, so they're anecdotes, and nowhere in them will you get these statements. But you get the statements in the scholarly work, but you don't get them in the sources. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and then moving on to the final bit of this, and we're coming back to arts marketing in the 21st century, which is where I started with the Edinburgh International Festival. Here are the earliest traceable, I thought that was way back. No, it's 2011, there you go, it's the same phrase. The medieval fool was one figure who could speak truth to power. From the Guardian Theatre blog, a little article on why we still need fools. Shakespeare's fools often speak truth to power, revealing uncomfortable realities. That's the Royal Shakespeare Company's Education and Resources. Fools and Clowns in Shakespeare, that's still there. The court jester was uniquely placed to speak truth to power. British Library Manuscripts blog. So it's a summary of some of the materials they hold. So those are very, institutionalized versions of what, you can trace back to, 1830s. These are the really fun ones. Clowning that challenges authority and tells truth to power. In the Stage magazine, quoting London International Mime Festival brochure copy for Spy Monkey. A modern clown who uses humour to speak truth to power. The Stage, quoting London International Mime Festival brochure copy for Twig v. Rakenshaw's show Nautilus. These are press releases, basically, from the companies that go into the brochure and then into the critics' reviews. And the best ones, Clown for Our Times, holding a mirror to society and speaking truth to power. Assembly Festival, Edinburgh Fringe, not official, brand new brochure for the establishment, 2018. Physical comedy that skewers authority and speaks truth to power. Underbelly, Edinburgh Fringe venue, programme copy for police cops. Fool for the modern age, daring to tell truth to power. Pleasance Theatre, Edinburgh Fringe venue, brochure for the copy for the Fool, 2019. So then it's gone all the way around. Those of you who weren't at the beginning here, this little search of mine started with me being asked to write brochure copy for the Edinburgh International Festival, tracing the continuous lineage of speaking truth to power by clowns. And it turns out that it's the Edinburgh Festival who write the stuff. You see what I'm saying? So this is not scholarship, this is institutional rhetoric. Yeah? Right. There's a potential pause there before we go on to some fun examples from clown history I will go through briefly. Anyone want to throw stuff in there, or question or wonder or anything else? And we'll talk at the end as well at length, but just in case you're itching to say something. No? Yeah.
You talk about, there was so many references to Shakespeare, and when the Fool and Lear is trying to sort of do this, speak to Lear, where is Shakespeare getting this notion?
Where is Shakespeare getting it? Well, two questions there, I would say. Is the Fool speaking truth to Lear in the sense of speaking truth to power, or is that a modern... I did have some quotations about Lear I didn't put in that were modern rephrasings of this speaking truth to power, referring to Lear's Fool. And there are some 19th century images, engravings, which show that as well. So I would wonder whether that is a 19th century and after idea of Lear's Fool. Yeah, so that's an interpretation that we've inherited, therefore that's what we see. And Shakespeare's idea about speaking truth to power, or some other phrase, because that phrase isn't there in the English language at that point, is also an invention of, when was Lear? I don't know, 1612? It's not the same era as the fools and the jesters. It's 100, 200, 300 years after, at least 100. So you already got a gap, So yeah, it's interesting. Why would Shakespeare do that? So then I'd ask, would audiences be interested in 1612, let's say, in an idea of a fool speaking truth to power? And if so, why? What power was being challenged or was not being challenged? So it might be an idea relevant to the time, in which case that's why it would be in the play. That's what I would say. That would be my assumption, rather than it being a fact about fools. Yeah? But that's just my angle, my bias. Yeah. Anything else on that? Let's look at some fun stuff. Fun stuff. Yeah? No, you want to say something?
Oh, well, I've got the Buffon itch. And so I'm like, whoa, what the fuck does that mean for Buffons?
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know what my question is. I'm just like,
What does it mean for you? Yeah.
what does it mean?
Yeah.
Well, I've already had a hard time since your clown theory course when you and I and, sorry, I'm forgetting her name. We were talking, she was like, well, I tried to find where Philippe Goyer and Jacques Lecoq got the Buffon. Where did Buffon originate? Is that an origination?
Oh, well, that's another historical moment. Yeah. So before going to that, I would say that, going back to that, I would say that for me, there's a couple of lessons here. One is that the idea of historical tradition, continuity, and so on is generally constructed. Yeah, for certain reasons. Again, that's my angle on everything, so I'm going to go there. So the idea of clowns speaking truth to power is surely going to be historically specific, yeah? And there might be different versions. There might be a 17th century version, there might be another version, yeah? So that's the first thing. So to claim that there's this tradition just for brochure copy, bullshit. No, there isn't. Yeah, that's not right. That's historically inaccurate. However, if lots of people are using that term and that concept, what does that mean? It must mean something. Yeah, it must mean it's relevant, right? So you might say, "Oh, that's so, pedantic," but I don't think it is. So one thing is, I'm not saying like clowns speak truth to power is not a thing. It must be a thing if people are doing it. If you're doing it, it's a thing. Yeah. You could be the only one doing it. It's still a thing.
In the German court at that specific time.
Yeah, exactly. And those jesters weren't doing it. They were.
I'm not questioning like, oh, is that what I'm not like? But in the history of Buffon, it does make me question and starting to others question like, is this mythological story about Buffon one that we should be telling?
Right. Yeah.
Also like a question of linear time too,
Oh yeah. That old linear time. Yeah. Is it story? Is it myth? Does it help you? Or do you then kind of re-project the myth and the mythical time back onto linear time and say that's what actually happened? Because that's risky. Yeah.
I was just going to say, for what it's worth, when I was at Joliet, they told a story. Now, you never know what's true and what's not, but they said that Jacques Lecoq was working with a Dutch student, and the Dutch student just wriggled and just wouldn't stop moving and was just horrible, just moving, and so Jacques Lecoq got out a rope and got the students to tie him up and like put his arms in his sleeves and like basically just really restrict his movement. And then they were like, ooh, something interesting is coming.
Something interesting.
And he was tied up and he was
Phrase,
really
that is the
restricted,
phrase.
and then from that they added, sort of started like putting dirt on his face and stuff, and then they're like, oh, okay, theatre is coming. And then there were like all these other isolated stories. There's like stories of Amazons coming out of the jungle for a day.
Something interesting is coming.
Yeah.
I hear you repeating
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
sound
Yeah.
bites from Cod.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like when from the other side, when power can hold the truth, maybe it's when it comes with a curve of comedy and humor or clowning. So that's why like it could be like that's the only way that the power, the big ego that holds everything down,
Mm.
can allow to hear what needs to hear.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so all the things around speaking truth to power through clowning make sense, you know. But going back to David Carlyon's thing, that he then felt uncomfortable with the boast, yeah? Because if you're speaking truth to power and then you're the big guy because you're the trickster, and hey, yeah, I embody all the, you know, all the indigenous stuff, even though I'm a white guy, or whatever, you know, even if you're not just a white guy, it's like, well, what use is it then? You know? It's like, what are you doing with that idea? Why do you need to extend it back into history like that? So these are the questions around that. The thing about Buffon, that in Lecoq's own writing was just, I don't know if it's true or not, he didn't write much. It was after the event. It's like 20 years after, so who knows, he might have forgotten. Just because someone writes about their own work doesn't mean to say it's true. Come on, right? But he wrote, we'd done clowns and we wanted to work out how those people, you know, those people who make fun of everything and everybody, how do they do that? So they experimented, and maybe it was that, I don't know what they did, it doesn't say. And then we found out how to do it, you know? We workshopped it and we found out how to do it, and we called it a Buffon. Or I called it a Buffon. The same as you said about
And
clowns.
they used the gestures in the courts and the speaking truth to power
That got,
thing.
I don't know.
The
wasn't
Victor
there.
Hugo is what stood out to me, and I was like, that
The swamps.
is connected to the Buffon mythology story that I've been told.
That's the Victor Hugo, exactly. Yeah. I got told that story about the swamps. Yeah. Yeah, Seth.
Why do you think people, contemporary people, want to say that clowns speak truth to power?
That's a really good question. Why? I don't know. Something to believe in. To claim some power, if you're feeling powerless. I mean, the whole counterculture thing from the 50s onwards, you know, roped clowns into that whole progressive thing. It was easy to do, you know, but everyone was doing it. Like, you know, dancers were doing it, jazz musicians were doing it, ceramicists were doing it, like the whole spontaneity, improvisation, we know what's going to happen, inversion kind of stuff was happening in everything. So, but clowns kind of lent themselves quite easily to it because they're, you know, they seem a little odd, and, you know, society is, you know, a time in the 50s and 60s in the Western, you know, countries, it was a time when, you know, society was looking phony. That was the word, right? Phony.
Well, I mean,
And if society's phony, then where's the truth? It must be inside us. You know, it's the times.
If you think about stand-up comedy, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of comics would connect with, you know, speaking truth to power in terms of if their critique on, you know, politics or, you know, and powerful figures are going to make it onto TV or a special or, you know, so I do think that there's a draw, like, from humans, like humanity, like we do like critiquing. We will complain about people in power all the time, whether it's
Chrissy.
And but then when you add joy and laughter, I think that's the impulse to romanticize it, because it's like, oh, that's magical.
Yeah.
You're embedding joy with the critique and with the fuck you.
Yeah.
So I do think there
It's
is.
very attractive.
It's attractive.
Very attractive, yeah. You know, I had a little note here that refers to that. I didn't say that, you know, once it becomes Arts Council, you know, festival speak, then, you know, it's become dominant. It's the dominant idea about it, and it's about the social value. You know, these clown people, they're really valuable. And we're saying they're really valuable because now you can spend, you know, $100 to go and see them. International Festival, expensive, you know, it's not the Fringe. And so, because they're socially valuable, therefore pay your money and go and see the show. Because they're valuable, because they're aesthetically, you know, avant-garde maybe. Hey, look, they're mixing, you know, saw the show trailer, they're mixing old stuff with you know, contemporary edge. You know, that's valuable. They have progressive ideas about art. And also, I would say, in terms of the political critique they might bring, it's a safe form of political critique in that marketing thing. You know, you spend a lot of money going to see a show that's clowns speaking truth to power, and that's safe. Yeah? So it fits. It's nice. It works. Everyone's happy. The marketers are happy. The clowns are happy. The audience are happy. You know, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. It's nice. Yeah. Yeah.
You touch on Ubu Roy. And Ubu Roy. Ubu Roy.
Raw.
King Ubu. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the question about Ubu Roy?
Or if you're going to touch on it.
I can touch on Ubu Roy if you want. I wasn't.
Older, but it has the elements of.
Yeah. I mean, Ubu Roy is, yeah, when is that? 1913, I think? 1890. Thank you.
I had to look it up.
You're right. I mean, Ubu Roy, Alfred Jarry's play. I mean, what I find, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but what's fascinating about his play is he basically wrote it when he was a teenager, like 14, 15 years old, and it's a piss take of his teacher. So it's a satire of his teacher, and when you start thinking of it like that as a teenage boy's teacher satire, you get the tone of it. It's like, and it's quite. Again, I would say because of the historical moment, another historical moment, that wouldn't be a play in a theatre that the bourgeois audience would have been shocked by, and, you know, it's like there was a fight or whatever happened, the riot, you know, that wouldn't be there. That was part of the times, you know, of modernism, of, you know, experimentation, let's shock the audience. And so that, I mean, in its time, it was more about a big fuck you to the audience, you know, which is a bit of a Buffon thing, right? Hey, you're supposed to, you know, you're to making fun of your audience, and they're not supposed to realize, right? Is that Buffon? Kind of.
It's debatable.
It's debatable, yeah. But in this case, they did realize, and they threw stuff at the stage, you know, like they didn't like it. But that was the time, that era, you know, Stravinsky's, the Red Spring, all that stuff, all that avant-garde modernist stuff was getting, you know, fruit thrown at it on the stage by people in dress suits, you know. It's like the bourgeois were behaving like animals. So that's where I'd put it there. In terms of its content, it's a satire. It's kind of, you know, all the characters are kind of disgustingly horrible, and, you know, So it's part of that. Whether you could then do a production of this being about truth to power, speaking truth to power, I'm sure you could. but I'm not sure I would use that phrase about its original context. I would talk about it as, it's a teenage fantasy. It's a fantastic fantasy. I love it. But yeah, you could do that. Just in terms of time for today, we're on the hour already, and I can do some more talking and show you stuff, or we can keep talking. I don't mind what we do.
Yeah, let's see the stuff.
You want to see more stuff? Yeah. And if we go into another half hour, is that okay with you? You can leave. Yeah, is that cool? Yeah, right.